Well, look at that. They tried to keep us down, they tried to stop us, but we got to Friday again. And if I'm here and you're here, it means it's time for another episode of the Leaf Podcast. Now in this episode, I was originally thinking of what I should make it about. So as I was sitting there thinking about it, an hour passed and then 2 hours passed, and then I thought, wait, time slips. I haven't done one about time slips in a long time. I'm not even sure if I've done an episode of the podcast about them, but that's what this episode's going to be about. Time slips and just general high strangeness. If you've been a listener of the channel for a while now, you'll know that I do have experience with time slips and I've had a few of my own, but I'll get to those later. First up, I have one where a guy was playing hide and seek. Seems innocent enough, but things take a drastic turn, so let's get into it. I was 9 years old. I was living in the northern USA. My best friend lives next to a huge forest. We usually end up playing in there since there's no real border to it, so you can just walk straight into it from his yard. By this time, we've played in this forest for several years, sometimes with our parents, but more recently, without. As time went on, we were able to go from just the tree line to a few feet in, to pretty much as far as we wanted to. When this happened, it was early autumn. We decided to play hide and seek. I run away. We're about 15 minutes walk from his house, straight into the forest. I see this bush with a small hole under it. I crawl down into it, thinking that no one's going to find me there. I'm laying there, just listening to the forest. All of a sudden, all the sounds go quiet. I get this really weird, metallic taste in my mouth. Suddenly I hear footsteps. I press myself down under the bush and cover up my mouth so my buddy won't find me. The footsteps come closer, and they start to get slower. I think, damn, I hope he doesn't find me here. From under my bush, I watch as someone with old-style shoes, like the big buckle ones, walk past my bush. I think, what? There's not supposed to be anyone else out here. I lay there for a couple minutes more, listening closely for the footsteps, but they don't come back. By this time, I get bored because I'm a general kid with ADHD, so I jump out of there, and I realize just how dark it is all of a sudden. It's only been a few minutes. Why is it so dark out? I start to walk out to where my bro counted, but no one's there. Everything is empty. It's really hard to see because it's a thick forest and there's not much moonlight. I shout, "Ryan," several times, but no answer. And then I say, "Well, screw you, I'm heading home," still thinking somehow that all of this is some kind of prank. But still, no response. I find the 3 stones landmark that we have, and I start moving in the direction toward his house. As I walk, I see light, like someone with flashlights, and then someone yells, "There he is, he's over here." Some dude and a cop walks toward me and leads me back to my worried parents. I'd been gone for well over 6 hours. So right off the bat, what do you think happened here? Where do you think that he went for that time that he was missing? Because it seems that he was only there for a few minutes, and suddenly it's nighttime. It's also almost a question of when he went to. Since he was out there in the forest, and he got that metallic taste in his mouth, it seems that something shifted, or something happened. One thing I would have to wonder too is if there was like a staticky feeling in the air, with this, with that Oz effect, where all of a sudden the sounds just go dead, and everything's quiet. But it seems that something really did happen. As a kid who used to play hide and seek a lot, and as a kid who was very hyper, I know that you can't stay in the same spot for 6 hours because you get bored within about 30 seconds of hiding. It's like you want to be found, but you don't want to be found. It's a conflicting feeling. But yeah, what exactly do you think happened here? Or how do you think a shift happened? I spoke to someone the other day who was from Europe, and they said that the biggest difference between the forest, hello, my cat decided to join us, the biggest difference between the forest over there and the forest here is how different and just odd the forest feels here. And I made a joke to him, and I said, well, that's because the things that are in the forest here aren't human. And it was supposed to be like a haha creepy kind of joke, but then he knowingly said, yeah, I know, and then wouldn't elaborate much further. And this was a stranger I was talking to, so I didn't get much more out of him, but yeah, I thought that was just an odd interaction. And I think something that's especially creepy about time slips is that we're really only hearing from the people who came back afterward. And in that case, I have another one here. I'm not sure where this is from, but it seems to be in the 1990s. Which, random thing before we get into that, is I never quite felt so old as when someone asked me if I was born in the late 1990s, and I've never felt more old than that. It's like that scene in Saving Private Ryan where Matt Damon gets older. That's how I felt. But anyways, this happened in the late 1990s. This guy says he was on a school trip. They were going to a museum. Now, during this trip on the museum, he got a little bored from the tour, so he decided to kind of go off on his own, even though he wasn't supposed to. So, he goes down a different direction. He's just looking around. He turns the corner to go to this other exhibit that may interest him a little more, and all of a sudden, as he's walking, things get weird. His vision gets kind of hazy, the air feels electric, and suddenly, there's no walls. The ceiling is gone. The ground beneath his feet is now gravel. He's looking around thinking, what the hell? He can suddenly see workers, but they're dressed like they're really old. As he's looking around at these workers trying to figure out where they came from, where the museum went, one of them shouts, "Come over here, kid." So, not knowing what else to do, he goes over. The other worker hands him a bucket of water and tells him to bring it to a guy. The guy that he's pointing at is mixing concrete, so he goes over and hands him the bucket. Without looking, the other worker grabs it, but says nothing to him. He walks around some more, and the more he walks around, he notices that the surroundings look familiar, but much older, much less commercialized, much more rural. He can see a farm in the distance. He can see that people are dressed just odd compared to what he's used to. He can see an old truck that goes roaring past, that blocks his view. And just as the truck passes him, he's back in the museum. He's back exactly where he would have been before he saw all this. He gets creeped out and goes back to look for his class. He finds them and finds that no time has passed. He tells his friend about it, but his friend has no idea what he's talking about and says that he just went down the other corridor a few seconds before. So it seems what happened here is that he went back to it before the museum was built, or before whatever was there before the museum was built. And having an experience like that would be so confusing and probably scary if it actually happened to you. Now, this reminds me of a story that I was told a long time ago. I say told, but I more so overheard it between two other people that were talking about this. Not this specific thing, but they were talking about spooky stories and stuff. This guy said that he was somewheres in Alberta, I believe, and he was trying to get gas. He pulled up and the pumps looked normal, the gas station looked normal. So he pumps his gas, he puts the thing back on the holster thing, and then he goes inside to pay. But when he goes inside, as he's passing that kind of barrier between the door and the store, he feels weird. He feels he said he felt like a ghost walk through him, so it means he felt like a cold, cold shiver all of a sudden. And when he got in, the gas station was very different on the inside. He even said that there was a calendar on the wall that read 1994. And of course, this happened around 2015, 2016. So there's a bit of a time difference. Now, of course, he was a teenager during that year, so he remembers a lot of the stuff from that year quite well. He was looking around, and he saw people dressed like grunge. He saw the older people at the counter, dressed in like your typical plaid shirt and those big glasses that everybody had from the 70s onwards. He said that he walked over to the shelf and picked up a bag of Doritos, and it was the old logo, the old bag. Everything was as it would have been in 1994. He thought this was extremely weird, but knew that he really did have to get on his way. He goes up to the counter and tries to pay with his debit card, like the tap function, and they don't know what he's doing. The debit machine is totally different. It won't even take his card. There's no chip reader. So he's kind of confused as to what he's supposed to do. The guy looks at him and says, "Oh, do you have cash on you?" Probably thinking that this guy is just like from some foreign country that has a card that's not accepted. He says he has cash in his car. So he goes back out to get the cash. And by the time he comes back into the gas station, it's as it usually is. It's as it should be. Everything is back to how it would have been in 2015, 2016. He said it was the most confusing thing that he's ever had happen to him. And when he told people at work about what happened, he was expecting them all just to laugh at him and make fun of him. But they didn't. They basically said, "Yep, there's some strange things on that highway." So, by now I'm curious, have any of you had any kind of time slip like this? I know that in my case, I've talked about it before, where I was visiting my mom in the hospital, and I was trying to find the corridor or the hallway where she was, and the one I went down, everything looked old. The phone looked old, there was no computer, I don't think. There was a clipboard with names. Everything looked off. I'm not going to tell the full story because I have it written down somewhere in all the details. This was after it happened, and I don't want to get anything wrong, so I'm just not going to tell the full thing. But basically, I seem to go back in time to a different era of the hospital. Everything looked different. And then when I was able to come back through, trying to thank this woman that gave me directions, that corridor, that help desk, anything like that was gone. It was now an office or another room. It was very odd and confusing for me. I got so turned around that day that when I went to the elevator, I ended up in the staff area of the hospital somehow. Even though I got on a regular elevator, by the time I got down, I was somehow on the staff elevator. I was super confused. I still remember the doors opening, and they just look at me, and I look at them, and I'm just like, how do I get out of here? And there's also one interesting theory that I've heard about time slips, is that they aren't actually time slips. You're slipping to another parallel dimension for a very short period of time, and it's like there's a rubber band on you. You can only go so far before you're slingshotted back into where you're supposed to be. And I don't quite remember all the details about it because it just came to me before I get into the next story. It was during World War II, I believe. The US Navy was running experiments on doing cloaking or something with their ships. They give it a shot and the ship disappears. And then it comes back in a whole other area, several miles away. The ship was damaged, the crewmen were mostly dead, some of them were fused with the ship, and it was just a whole mess. I should probably actually look that up to see if I got the details right, but for now I think that was the gist of it. But for this next story, we're going to get more into the high strangeness realm of things. So this guy says, a sibling of mine and his wife went hiking during the very start of COVID. It was at a closed campground. There wasn't really anybody around for miles, mostly because they weren't supposed to be there in the first place. They go to a trail that they've been on many times before. But this time, immediately, my sibling felt as if something was up. He felt like he was being watched while he was hiking up this fairly easy hill. He knew that there were eyes on him. He just didn't know from where. While going up the hill, they both started noticing weird movements in the forest. He described it like the woods were glitching, like trees were moving inside of other trees. Still, they kept going forward, until they couldn't. Right in the middle of the path was a stack of trees too high to go over and spread all the way to the tree line on both sides. If they wanted to continue, they'd be forced to go into the forest around the stacked branches and trunks. As soon as he realized the trees had been snapped roughly at head height, he and his wife turned around and headed right back down the hill they came from. It was a quick straight up and straight down, slight incline, but that's not what showed up on their trail app. Checking their phone in the car immediately after getting down the hill, the app said that they went up a quarter mile of the way, made a sharp right, and then went back to the trail immediately, went up the rest of the hill, and jumped elevation by a good couple 100 feet, like they had been throwing their phone in the air as high as possible while walking. They still have no explanation for anything they felt or saw that day. So what do you think happened here? What do you think was causing the glitches in the trees, or better yet, why did their app do that? And now I know that apps can glitch and everything like that, and that can just happen every day. But this trail though, they've been on this trail quite a few times, and this has never happened. They never had the trees kind of meld in together. They've never seen like the trail just be blocked off all of a sudden by a wall of trees. So where do you think they went? What do you think happened? And it's good that they got to come back. And this next one is from Florida, St. Petersburg, Florida, to be exact, and it's very strange, and it could be cryptid related. But we'll see what you think. This guy says, "Okay, I've never shared this story with really anyone outside of my immediate family and my girlfriend of 2.5 years. I was born and raised here in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is a beach town that's kind of entwined with Tampa. I've been around in the mangroves and swamps since I can remember, so I'm used to the noises of living on the bayou. When this took place, I was 14, which was in 2004. I was living on the 3rd story of my dad's townhome. That was the last building for 1 mile, and then there was ocean and a highway. There was nothing but mangroves for 1 mile straight in 3 directions of brackish swamp. This happened around 2 to 3 in the morning. I had been playing WoW for about 10 hours a day back then, and this was on summer break, so there wasn't much else to do, and it was super hot. I was sitting around working on trade skills when I heard this ungodly noise from the mangroves. The closest thing I can compare it to was the hacking throat-clearing noise that Golem makes in Lord of the Rings, but it quickly turned into something different. Short roars, a few of them. Anyways, it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I grabbed my sword that I bought at the flea market because I was 14, and I didn't think that anyone would believe me about what I heard. This is when I absolutely shit myself. I hear a thud on the roof that could only be a person, at least 100 pounds, jumping up onto the roof. I'm on the 3rd story here. This is a flood zone, so the buildings are raised quite high. There's no ladders, no roof access, no fire escapes to climb, nothing. Whatever this was had to either fly or jump 3 stories or climb 35 feet straight up. I'm shitting myself even more now, holding my sword like it's going to save me somehow. I hear this thing walk across my roof in one single deliberate step after another. I hear a thump, 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 and then a crash. I heard it jump back down into the mangroves and run off. I still keep a gun close by at night because of that thing. I told my dad after about 5 months. He laughed at me. But a month later, almost to the day, he was out on the patio at 5 a.m. for whatever reason, doing dad stuff, and he heard the same awful scream and heard something out in the mangroves. He still asks me sometimes if I have any idea what it may have been. So, of course, I'm going to ask again. What do you think this was? What do you think is out there in the mangroves that can just climb 35 feet straight up? Of course, I don't really believe it was a human, so what entity do you think could have done this? And, better yet, have you had anything happen like this? In the past, I think I did this in a video, this same story, or something similar, and I had spoke to somebody from Florida or somebody who had lived in Florida for years. I showed them the story, and I asked them what they thought about it, and they just laughed and said, "Yep, that tracks, that's Florida." So, let me know. I've never been to Florida, but now I kind of want to go there. Not to get, clapped by a cryptid in the middle of the mangroves, but more so because the winters here are cold and it's warm there. But yeah, let me know what you think any of these were. What happened to the guy who was playing hide and seek? Where did he go, or when did he go? Same for the guy who was at the museum. In some of these cases where they go and there's no people, I half wonder if they went somewhere where there are no people anymore, or like a world where the plague wiped everybody out. I don't know. It's just kind of really spitballing here because there's not a whole lot of explanation as to what happened or where they go or anything like that. Now, of course, if you liked this episode of the podcast, I invite you to like and subscribe. I post 3 times a week, and I know that not everybody likes the podcast. I've gotten some comments in the past about it, but I still like doing it, so I'm going to keep doing it. And, of course, there's 2 other videos. There's Wednesday and Sunday, and in those videos, I deal with mainly high strangeness, cryptids, aliens, really anything in this kind of sphere of stuff. So, if you would, please like and subscribe. If you want to support the channel a little bit more, then I have a PayPal and a Patreon. I also have memberships and super thanks here on YouTube. Or some of you have a hype feature, and I would be very grateful if you were to use one of those on one of my videos. I've been told that it helps other people see the videos, it helps the algorithm some way. I don't understand it. I'm just kind of rambling now, so as always, if you have a story of your own, I have an email in the description. If you want to support the channel, there's the links. And of course, just being here, liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting, all that great stuff really helps the channel too. And I hope to see you Sunday. I hope you had a good week. I hope you have a good weekend. And let's hope next week is even better. Thank you for pulling up a stump, and thank you for watching.